Phantom, Requiem for the Phantom, is about freedom and control, portraying characters stripped of their autonomy and forced into lives they never wanted. Zwei's journey reflects this brutal reality. He didn't choose this life. Fate dragged him into a violent existence. He never sought the life of an assassin. All he ever wanted was to live peacefully. Yet that simple wish was denied from the outset. They thrust him into a desolate facility, wiped his memories clean, erased his past, and forcibly reshaped his identity. They forced him to train relentlessly under the constant threat of death, learning to kill on command. They told him that if he didn't comply, they would eliminate him. Every time he hesitated, Ein, his cold, emotionally distant partner, reminded him of this fact. He had no escape, no way to resist. His only option was to keep descending into this dark world. As Zwei trained, he transformed. He pushed his body and mind to their limits, running long distances, working out incessantly, and practicing with firearms until these actions became second nature. He learned to use a variety of weapons, stay vigilant, and maintain hyper-awareness of his surroundings. With each lesson, each training session, they stripped away another layer of his humanity. He spent hours shooting targets until he could no longer imagine his hands without a gun. At first, Zwei struggled with the morality of what they forced him to do. He tried to reject it, to resist the tide pulling him deeper into the role of a killer. But with each step, he lost more of himself. The repetition of violence numbed his mind, and gradually, he stopped thinking altogether. He no longer had the energy to mentally resist. The emotional and psychological toll overwhelmed him. Exhausted, stressed, and confused by his situation, he detached from his thoughts and emotions to cope. He had to become dissonant from his true self to feel any relief. In this world, no ordinary person could survive without closing themselves off, and that's exactly what happened to Zwei. When Claudia meets Zwei, she provides a philosophical framework that contrasts with the bleak fatalism under which he has been operating. She acknowledges the harsh reality of their lives within Inferno, that they serve as tools in a criminal empire, controlled and manipulated. However, Claudia's perspective becomes profound in her refusal to see herself as a mere slave to fate. She admits they cannot choose their ultimate destination, but introduces the idea that they can still control how they move toward that fate, much like determining the speed at which they approach an inevitable outcome. This statement reveals something complex about Claudia. She understands that her true desires trap her, not necessarily the organization or external forces. Her ambition for power controls her life. Although highly intelligent, manipulative, and calculating, she recognizes that her ambition keeps her shackled to the same world that imprisons Zwei and Ein. Despite this, she insists on exercising whatever control she can, even if it's just over the pace at which she lives her life. At first, Zwei resists this philosophy, seeing himself and Ein as slaves to an inescapable fate. However, Claudia's analogy of speed versus destination shows him something new. She suggests that while they may not escape the harsh world they inhabit, they can still control how they navigate it. This idea gives Zwei a new sense of purpose. Even though he doesn't know his final destination, Claudia's words inspire him to take charge of his new journey. This is shown visually in his actions after their conversation. He continues his training even after the day's work is done, pushing himself forward, regardless of where the path leads. Claudia's entire character arc is encapsulated in this moment. She wants to mentor Zwei, not just because of his potential as an assassin, but because she sees a reflection of herself in him. She sees someone who, like her, is trapped by the cruel circumstances of the world. By encouraging Zwei to embrace whatever power he can assert over his life, she subtly reveals her own philosophy of survival in a world where control is limited. Zwei's final test strips away any remnants of his former self, forcing him to confront the darkest aspect of his new reality, the necessity to kill. Lieutenant Wallace, a Navy SEAL, serves as his first target, making this not only a test of Zwei's training, but also of his ability to embrace the assassin's life. Despite his capabilities, Zwei hesitates. Killing someone contradicts everything he once believed. And even with Ein's constant threats, he struggles to reconcile his actions with his sense of self. When Zwei finds Wallace, he's momentarily swayed by the man's appeal to his humanity. Wallace talks about his family. He manipulates him, mirroring the moral traps Zwei constantly faces in this world. The turning point comes when Wallace's deception forces Zwei into a kill or be killed situation. Zwei's survival instinct takes over, a primal, involuntary reaction that reveals why Inferno recruited him. His latent ability to overcome the odds when pushed to the brink is exactly what they need. But this victory feels hollow. Instead of triumph, Zwei experiences an overwhelming sense of loss, not of Wallace's life, but of his own soul. Killing Wallace wasn't just an act of survival, it marked the death of Zwei's innocence. Ein responds with chilling clarity. She tells Zwei that to continue living, he must abandon his senses, his eyes, ears, and heart, and become the Phantom. It reflects her own internalization of this brutal philosophy. Ein has lived in this world longer than Zwei, and she has long accepted that survival requires her to surrender her humanity and function solely as an instrument of death. She believes that in this world, only tools can survive. However, her words only show her own tragedy. Ein has buried her humanity so deep that she no longer believes it exists. But Zwei rejects her. He refuses to abandon his true self, even if it means death. This moment shows that despite everything, Zwei cannot fully surrender to the dehumanization Inferno demands. His plea to Ein to end his life is a desperate attempt to avoid becoming what he fears most. He would rather die than continue living as a hollow version of himself. But then something unexpected happens. Ein refuses to kill Zwei. Despite her facade as a compliant, emotionless assassin, she still retains a sliver of her humanity. This moment marks one of the first times Ein acts out of something other than pure obedience to orders. She tells Zwei to get up, suggesting that she sees in him something worth saving. Perhaps because she sees a reflection of her own lost self in his refusal to give in. This small act of defiance from Ein, though subtle, indicates that she's not entirely the phantom she pretends to be. Deep down, beneath years of conditioning, she still remains human. Soon, Zwei and Ein are sent on assignments to complete together. In one scene, in order to get closer to their target, they act as a young couple. Afterwards, when they're leaving the mall, Ein comments that Zwei's acting sucks. This is interesting. On the surface, it seems odd. Zwei convincingly plays the part of an awkward high school boy, smiling and interacting with Ein playfully. But Ein's remark suggests that he notices something deeper. Zwei isn't just acting. He genuinely enjoys spending time with her. This shows something interesting in Zwei's character development. Despite the world he's been thrust into, parts of him still long for normalcy, connection, Ein, who abandoned such desires long ago, notices this shift in him, and it unsettles her. From this moment on, Ein starts watching Zwei more closely. Her lingering stares might indicate an attempt to understand what is happening to him, or maybe they reflect concern. Ein has walked the path Zwei is on, and she knows where it leads. She sees herself in him, someone on the verge of losing their humanity. This recognition likely fills her with sympathy, and maybe even grief. When Zwei saves Ein from some stray bullets, their relationship shifts completely. Until now, Ein has held the dominant position in their partnership, guiding and training Zwei. However, this act of protection shows that Zwei is no longer just a student or follower. He has become her equal. This changes the way Ein perceives him. During the firefight, she stares at him for a prolonged time, and her gaze seems to go beyond mere respect or admiration. It's almost as if Ein is starting to see Zwei as more than just a partner. Ein's continued stares, even during the car ride back, suggests that her feelings for Zwei are evolving. She may be developing a deeper emotional connection with him, one that extends beyond their professional partnership. The fact that both of them continue staring at each other during these moments implies a mutual recognition. For Ein, who has long repressed her emotions in order to survive, this growing connection with Zwei may be terrifying and comforting. It signifies that she is still capable of human connection, but it also introduces a vulnerability that she likely hasn't experienced in a very long time. Claudia has been watching Zwei closely since the very beginning. As he grows rapidly, even surpassing Ein in progress, Claudia sees an opportunity, not just for Zwei to become a powerful tool for Inferno, but for her own ambitions. And so, she assigns him a deeply troubling mission, one that will test the limits of his loyalty. Claudia gives Zwei the task of eliminating a gangster's family, including an innocent child. This mission crosses the final moral line. It's no longer just about survival. It demands total submission to Inferno's will. The tragedy amplifies when the child looks up to Zwei as a heroic figure, completely unaware of the darkness lurking behind his outward appearance. This boy sees Zwei as something mystical and good, and that's what makes it so devastating. In the boy's room, Zwei faces arguably the most difficult decision of his life. His survival eyes emerge, symbolizing the primal instinct that takes over when he is pushed to the brink. In this moment, Zwei's mind, his conscious self, likely can't handle the task at hand. Killing a child goes against the last remnants of his humanity, but at the time, he knows that failing the mission will result in his death at Inferno's hands. His instincts override his moral hesitation. The activation of his survival eyes shows that Zwei's ability to kill without thinking is what keeps him alive in this world. It's not just a physical instinct, it's a psychological defense mechanism. His mind shuts down and his body takes over, doing what is necessary to survive. This moment reflects how far he has fallen. The boy who once questioned the ethics of killing has become someone who can carry out even the darkest of tasks. Zwei has reached the point where he can kill without hesitation, even if it means taking innocent lives. To ensure his continued existence, he sacrifices his humanity. Claudia believes fate is inescapable, but she insists that individuals can control the pace at which they approach their inevitable end. This belief is what makes her such an interesting character. She accepts the inevitability of destiny, but still holds on to the idea that some level of agency remains. Claudia's interest in Zwei aligns with this belief. She sees in him the potential to embody her view of controlling one's fate, She doesn't want to use him as a puppet or a tool. She wants him to make a conscious decision to follow her. What makes this even more interesting is how she handles Zwei's autonomy, by restoring his memories and allowing him to face his past as Reiji Azuma. Until now, Reiji's actions were driven by survival and external forces, particularly Ein's threats. But with Claudia's gesture, she changes the narrative. Reiji no longer has to kill to survive under the immediate threat of violence. He now has a choice. This choice reveals the deeper psychological and emotional prison in which Reiji finds himself in. Restoring his memories doesn't grant him freedom. It forces him to confront the crushing weight of his guilt. All the values his family, friends, and community instilled in him come crashing down as he realizes the terrible things he has done to survive. Claudia's invitation for him to make a decision becomes almost a cruel revelation. Even with his autonomy restored, Reiji realizes that he is not truly free. No one physically coerces him anymore, but the moral weight of his actions still binds him. This is one of the profound themes of the anime, the prison of one's own nature. Reiji is not trapped by external forces, but by his guilt and the irreconcilable conflict between who he once was and who he has become. Even when presented with the option to leave, he can't. He remains bound by the person he has been forced to become, an assassin who committed unspeakable acts to survive. The idea of freedom is deconstructed here. Although Reiji regains his autonomy, he remains enslaved to the consequences of his actions. Maybe this is what Claudia wants him to realize. Claudia revealing this information to Reiji isn't just about creating a loyal tool. She is testing his limits. She's breaking down any illusions he had about freedom. She doesn't want him to follow her blindly. She wants him to choose to follow her, to see himself as someone with agency. But Claudia knows the weight of his guilt, and the path he has taken will prevent him from ever truly being free. In a sense, Claudia isn't shaping Reiji as an assassin. She's forcing him to confront the darkest parts of himself and accept that there is no escape. In this way, Claudia brings forth one of the most interesting points in the anime. True freedom is not just about physical autonomy, but also the ability to live with oneself. Phantom consistently conveys an overarching sense of nihilism, showing how Zwei and Ein remain trapped by forces beyond their control. These forces don't manifest as physical barriers, but as internal struggles with identity and purpose. The idea of escape, both literal and metaphorical, repeats throughout the story, yet the characters can't free themselves from their psychological chains. Reiji bears the weight of guilt for the atrocities he's committed, the people he's killed, and the life he's been forced into. This guilt acts as a psychological prison, preventing him from moving forward or finding peace. No matter how far he runs from his past, the weight of his actions pull him back into a cycle of violence and survival. In contrast, Ein remains trapped by her lack of identity. Scythe Master, the man who stripped everything from her, is the only person who provides her with a sense of purpose, no matter how abusive or manipulative he is. She returns to him repeatedly because, without an identity or past to ground her, she doesn't know who she is or what her life means beyond the role he imposed on her. Her inability to escape Scythe Master comes not from a physical bond, but from her lack of a foundation to break free from the identity he created for her. Both Reiji and Ein remain stuck in a cycle of criminality, cruelty, and violence. The forces controlling them, whether Inferno, Scythe Master, or even their own guilt, strip them of any agency. The anime builds its sense of nihilism on this premise. No matter how hard they try, they find themselves pushed back into the roles they are forced to play. Their suffering remains constant, and the world around them offers no respite from the trauma they endure. In this world, those in power force others to commit unspeakable sins, and the consequences devastate their souls. Despite this overwhelming nihilism, the anime's final arc offers a rare glimpse of hope. After months of running and hiding, Reiji and Ein find themselves in Mongolia, Ein's homeland. Though she never fully regains her memories, Ein recognizes this place as home because of the sky. But what matters most to her isn't where she came from, it's the name Reiji gave her. That name allowed her to create a new identity, a self she could embrace beyond the one shaped by Scythe Master's control. Through Reiji, she gains a sense of autonomy and purpose, which is why her memories with him hold the greatest significance. Reiji's vow to make Ein smile becomes his final purpose, and achieving that goal grants him a sense of release. Ein's genuine smile marks the completion of Reiji's mission, and with his purpose fulfilled, Reiji's life comes to an end. In a bittersweet moment, Reiji dies in the field, having finally succeeded in giving Ein the peace and sense of self that had eluded her for so long. For me, the first arc of this anime is what made it truly special. It's where everything came together: the character transformations, the deep themes of identity, guilt, and fatalism. That arc focused so much on Reiji and Ein, and their journeys were incredibly powerful. I mean, the other arcs were great too. They gave us more insight into characters like Lizzie, Claudia, and Cal, and we got to see more of Ein and Reiji's story unfold. But honestly, it's the first part that really pulled me in. It had the most profound aspects of the entire show, hands down. The exploration of who Reiji and Ein are, and what they were going through, felt incredibly raw. Their struggles with their identities and the weight of their guilt hit hard. The whole sense of being trapped by fate, unable to escape. Those themes were woven so perfectly into the story. I loved the anime as a whole, don't get me wrong, but the first arc, that was on another level. It's what stood out to me the most, and is what I think made Phantom truly shine. It was a masterpiece.